Bruce will ever be.
7 to 6:59.
Point of order. I think 7 o'clock yet.
We'll be back after the break.
Councillor Webb,
So,
I'm not sure what to say, but interested I'd say that. Throw my weight around.
We are in the hands of the chair. That's very true.
Just want to say 7.
Great hands they are.
we thought,
Safe hands?
I said great, but you can say safe.
Okay.
we'll just see what the opinion poll says.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to open the meeting by acknowledging the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the land. City of Prospect acknowledges that we are on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains region, and we pay our respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationships with the land, and we acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. I'd now like to read the Council Pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Item number 2 on the agenda, there's no one on leave. Item 3, we received apologies from Mayor O'Loughlin and Councillor Nguyen. Item number 4, declarations by members of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations? Item number 5, confirmation of minutes. Would someone like to move that motion?
So second.
Councillor Barnett. Is there any discussion? Okay, would the mover like to sum up?
No, thank you.
No, thanks. All those in favour? Against? Unanimous? Okay. Item number 6 on the agenda, public question time. Looking into the gallery, and there doesn't seem to be anybody there. So as there's no one there, there's no people to ask any questions. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Very all handled by me. Okay. I was looking forward to reading the entire code of practice there, but it doesn't look like I've got the opportunity to do so. Item number 7, petitions nil. Item number 8, deputations nil. Item number 9, questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice?
Yeah, just one if I can. I haven't been on email the last few days for obvious reasons to a few people, but just want to check if we put forward our City of Prospect sort of, I guess, project wish list, if you want to call that, to the federal government for consideration ahead of the upcoming federal election for particular candidates.
So, yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, yes. We've met with the local federal member, Steve Georgianis, and presented that to him. We are not yet aware of who his opposition candidate will be. If it's been announced, I'm not aware of it.
It's been Amy Grantham's a federal.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I found that out today.
But she's been there for a while. Yeah.
So the plan now is to update the document we have to be more relevant to the federal side of things, and then to represent it. So that's on my to-do list following a meeting with the Mayor today.
No trouble. I'll give you her details.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions on notice? Sorry, questions without notice. Councillor De Backer and Councillor Greg.
Just briefly, look, I understand that the council administration ran a Ghana tour, which for those who attended, I think was very valuable. I was unfortunately unable to go on the tour on the day. And I was just wondering if the notes are going to, through the chair, are going to be forwarded to elected members.
CEO, were there notes taken, or was no handouts on the day, I don't think, to share?
Yeah, so through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, I don't believe there are any notes from the day, but what there were some documents provided by our tour leaders around things such as the letters patent and other such things. My understanding, Director Cunningham, is that we were seeking those out to provide. I'm not sure if we've been able to source those documents yet.
Through the chair, I remember the question coming and I put it to my manager who is looking into it, but I haven't seen it, which tells me that we don't have that response yet. But I can follow up.
So that's where we're at with that. So we'll follow up with that.
Can I just add there, David had a full set because he took them off of me. David had a full set and I thought we could just copy them and give them out.
I wasn't aware of that, Councillor, so I'll follow up with the Mayor on that.
So we probably should check with the company that did the tour to make sure there's no copyright or anything like that there, but that's with the CEO.
Yeah,
So.
I'm quite sure there wasn't.
No, he gave them to us.
Sourced by,
okay.
They were sourced from public documents from 200 years ago, so
Yeah.
it should be fine.
Councillor Groot.
Look, I've just got a question. It probably in part relates to the motion notice 14.1, but I'd just like to ask a question, myself some thinking time. The question is in relation to the supply of parking permits to staff as a result of the parking changes that Council agreed to earlier this year, late last year. Just curious to know whether there's been much feedback to Council on that, because I've certainly had a lot. Just trying to understand if that feedback has filtered into here. And I'm not sure if that's the intent of the motion, and we'll find out later on, I guess, but I'm just curious to get my thinking around this. So the question really is, has there been a lot of feedback to Council administration on the impact of staff having car parking passes, particularly in the side streets?
So have we collated responses and feedback from the...
So through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, not much direct feedback has made it to me. I might ask my Director of Infrastructure if he's had any direct feedback on it.
For the Mayor, very limited. I can only think of one actually directly raised issue with us in regard to a parking permit that belongs to a staff member. Lots of feedback generally, but only one in regard to a staff member and staff parking permit.
I will say, though, that I've heard some feedback through elected members, in particular through the Mayor, which I think is what's triggered tonight's motion.
And maybe just a follow-up question. Can you just remind us how many were distributed?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, I couldn't tell you exactly unless, Vince, you could give us an idea.
Through the Mayor, I don't have the exact number, but it must have been in the vicinity of 80.
I should add to that, there were also a number provided to the Nature Foundation as tenants of this building that are in the same form. Are they not?
Through the Mayor, they are, and I'm including those in the 80.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Groot. Any more questions for that notice? We move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay, so we're into reports for decision. Item 10.1, appointment of independent member of the Audit Committee. Do I have a mover? Councillor Barnett and a...
Well, just to speak to.
Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, Councillor Barnett.
No, well, I think having been previously on the Audit Committee member, I was very impressed with Miss Garrett as a member and as a chairperson. So
thank you, Councillor Barnett. Councillor Rood, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thanks. Acting chair, acting mayor tonight, but just want to ditto to Councillor Barnett's words. Corinne's application was outstanding. She's been really good to work with in her current role as chair of the Audit Committee. Her application was, in my opinion, a clear standout to continue, and I highly recommend that she continues as well.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to talk to the motion? Councillor Groot.
Yeah, thank you. And just thank the panel who obviously spent time interviewing the applicants, and having met Ms. Garrett a few times, would agree with all the comments. However, I do have a question in relation to the length of tenure on the committee. So one of the really important things about audit committees is you bring new people in, fresh eyes, otherwise you do get a sense of groupthink and everyone just is doing the same thing each year in terms of the work program, or there is a possibility that could happen, I should say. I just wonder if I could be told how long Ms. Garrett's been on the committee and how long she's been the presiding member for.
Yeah,
Spoon?
Through the chair, Ms. Garrett has been on the committee for 6 years. So initial 3-year appointment, and then it can be reappointed for another 3 years. So the 6 years up. That's why this particular it is being advertised externally for this second this will be the 7th year.
Thank you. So that means she'll be on the committee for 9 years, which is a very, very long time for one person to serve on the Auditors Committee. Maybe my second question is, and I'm not sure who you'll direct this to, but I'm just interested to know whether that was taken into consideration in the recruitment process. And I'll ask that very broadly, not very specifically.
CEO.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, certainly I was on the panel and experience was taken into account. And I have to say that I actually counted that in favour of her based upon the conversations we'd had around this table led us to go back to test the market. If you recall, obviously we've had a lot of turnover at the senior staff level, and I believe there was a conversation around this table that did give some support to the notion of maintaining some continuity at the Audit Committee for that reason. I certainly didn't count it against her. Now, Ms. Moon, do you have anything to add to that?
Through the chair, I think the discussion were also along the lines of the asset management plan, that continuity of knowledge in terms of assisting council, providing advice to council through the next 3 years. The period in terms of when we finalize our asset management plan, our long-term financial plan. So that was the value.
Okay, sorry, one final question. In terms of the appointment of presiding member, and sorry, it's probably here and I might have just missed it, but is she being appointed as a member or as the presiding member? Or is there a different process to appoint a presiding member?
Yeah, so through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, my understanding is the committee appoints their own presiding member. So that will be appointed from the committee's number. So
look, on balance, I'll support it. I support the motion. I'm very nervous because while longevity is really important, I think in audit committees, audit and risk committees, having fresh eyes is also equally important, particularly also having a presiding member that will be there for 6 years. So that is not to take away from her skill expertise, and I really enjoy when she comes and talks to us. She's very, very knowledgeable and has provided great leadership. So I don't want that to reflect at all on that. It was just more of the concept of having an audit and risk committee that's got members for a very long period of time. So if I'm here in 3 years' time, I probably wouldn't support an extension because I think that would take it to 12 years, which is probably a jail sentence in some places. But I'm certainly happy to support the motion tonight.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the item? Okay, let's take a vote. All those in, summing up.
Yes, me.
That's the one.
Yes, I understand where some of the questions are coming from, but I think it is a bit different. When Ms. Garrett came on, she wasn't originally the chairperson, presiding member, and so she's then held that for a while, and that we have had some turnover. So I think that's one of the reasons why we do have turnovers and that. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Barnett. Okay, let's take a vote. So all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, item 10.2, dog registration fees 2022. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Group, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I think it speaks for itself.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Group, would you like to sum up?
Noted. Shortest speech in the history of the
Okay, let's take a vote. All those in favour? All those against?
Sum up.
Okay, unanimously.
Sum up of the year, I reckon.
Not mad.
Meow will be the next thing.
Next item on the agenda, item 10.3, Percy Street Reserve consultation outcomes and draft concept plan. Would someone like to move this motion? Councillor Pearce, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I would, and I've just got a few questions as well. Yeah, look, this is a really good report. It's good to see a few more numbers through the consultation this time, which is favourable, and the usage of the park appears to be high, so that's great. In the February workshop, we talked a figure of 150, and there's a budget bit in now under the capital budget for 215. And in the report, it mentions whether we need to decide on that figure. I'm just asking whether we need to decide that figure tonight, do we? Or because there's 4 or 5 items, if we don't agree with that higher figure, they drop out.
And part 3.
So,
Yes. I don't think we're approving any budgets tonight. I think we're looking to.
yeah, but we're putting this back out to consultation, round 2 consultation, and it's going to be at the higher figure. Just wondering whether we put it back out to consultation with the monkey bars and the hard stand and the shade, and they're all favourable items. And then we come back to the budget and say, well, you're not getting them. I'm just wondering whether we're shooting ourselves in the foot a bit.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, is it worth suspending meeting procedures for a few minutes just to have a discussion on this? Okay, so I'd like to now remember. Can I have a vote to suspend meeting procedures? All those in favour?
So you've got to pick a time.
Sorry, the mover, Councillor Pearce, a seconder.
No, you just got to pick a time if you don't. If you
Oh, you need a seconder. Yes, I'll second it.
We'll say 10 minutes if that's okay. So until 7:25 if needed. All those in favour? Okay. So I guess the question is, we take something out to consultation which is in excess of what we've got in the budget, and we raise expectations, and then we have to dash those expectations against the rocks of reality. So noting that in the report there was reference to discussions with community interest groups around funding and potentially local businesses as well, but I understand that hasn't proceeded to the point where we have anything concrete. Vincent?
Sorry, with businesses in regard to if they contribute. No, we haven't got any outcomes on that as of yet.
I guess with our last CAP meeting, we didn't look at that one and dropping it. We're happy to have that in there. And other cuts were found. So I'm quite happy that it stays in at that figure. It's just mentioning here, if we're not happy with that figure, so shouldn't be going out to consultation.
Mr Deputy Mayor, if I may. There's a few things to point out here, members. The report makes it very clear that we received loud and clear the message that 150K was the desired budget outcome. But equally, we received feedback that these nice-to-have additional items were desirable. And I guess what we're asking you to consider tonight is whether you would like to consult on a smaller scope at that $150,000 level, noting that those extra items would come out, or whether you're willing to move into a consultation phase at the constructed cost of 210, noting the extra $5,000 in the draft budget was for an opening event. Now, right now, the capital draft budget that members have has the $215,000 number in it, and it is part of an open space allowance under the long-term financial plan that is undersubscribed. So members may choose to do that, and within the open space category of the long-term financial plan, it is currently affordable at that level. However, it is obviously an opportunity cost as well for members, and so an extra $60,000 could absolutely be committed to something else were members minded to do so, but of course that would compromise the scope of this project. So members do need to think about expectation setting when you go to consultation. There's absolutely something you want to think about. But at the same time, you need to think about the relative value of that $60,000 additional being spent potentially on this project versus something else. Even though this is really only at the consultation stage, you're not making a decision, but you certainly might be setting expectations. I think that is a clear thing to consider, and it's something I think we would invite members to think about as part of this debate.
Councillor at the back, then Councillor Burnett.
Just a question. I mean, is it possible that we could look at as a staged project? Certainly, like there's things that could be done before and after.
So, Mr. Camille?
Thank you. Look, to some degree, for some of those items, it is possible. I would suggest for the playground elements and the hard stand, if we want to do it as part of the upfront works, we could technically add the shade shelter later. It would probably cost you a little bit of a premium to put it in place, but that is the item that could be more easily timed at a later date.
Thanks, Vincent. Anything else,
Yeah, just through the formal meeting, but through the chair, just regards to, I know the mayor in his absence had talked about redoing the gates, and here we've got a proposal that the gates stay with some artwork potentially. Has people like the Men's Shed been approached to be engaged in these kind of projects at all?
Okay, so in this case, no, not the Men's Shed. With the Men's Shed, apparently we do have to be a little bit careful with what we actually get them to do, because they're actually a federally funded program, and we're probably, in regard to, like, we're getting them to make some signage for a stand up at Prospect Oval. That's slightly outside of their funding approval and requirements. It's actually seen as a commercial undertaking, I think, is the downfall. So they can't actually really get involved in this sort of project. We can certainly follow up, as previously spoken about, Lions Club and the like, to see if they're prepared to put some money on the table, or even try a little bit of a longer bow with R.M. Williams. But yeah, we do have to be a little bit careful around where the funding comes from for these other secondary programs.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks. Councillor Barnett.
Yes. I'm just wondering about a bit of due diligence here with this, because we are saying, I'm just, if we are testing the waters through consultation, the second one, that are people really not aware, and they're going to be disappointed that if we say, right, well, we could do this for around about $150,000, you know, this is what you get for that. This is what you'll get for that. So then what's your sort of vote through a survey process of preference, keeping in mind that we are trying to reduce rates. Or a third option would be if people go for the 215,000, that they might prefer to vote for it to be a state, part of it to be staged. So that's where I'm coming from. So I'm just wondering what the advice is on that.
I think, again, through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, I think, again, it comes down to, in a sense, what you want out of the consultation process. I mean, my sense of it would be that you would, we've had workshop feedback from you. Obviously, everyone would like to spend $150,000 and get $210,000 worth of value, but ultimately, we need to determine whether or not, based upon, I guess, our budget appetite, and that's, I understand, very limited at the moment, whether or not it's worth spending potentially the extra money on this project. Because I think if there was a strong sense amongst members that this is, even though it would be nice to have, not something we can afford right now, yes, you might ask Mr. Kamel to figure out how much he would need to do what he has to do now and then leave the rest to be staged later. And I'm not sure whether Mr. Kamel could answer that question on the floor, or whether or not you would be willing to, at least for the purposes of consultation, go out with that, or whether members might prefer to go out with a more stripped back version and ask the community whether or not they might be okay to spend that extra money, or at least invite them to give the feedback that this is what they really, really want and the park's not going to be any use without it. So, and that might then give members a sense as to whether or not 210 or 150 or somewhere in between is the right number. I know this is not an easy decision to make, and we're not trying to be cute, I guess, with the recommendation and the inputs, but we do have, I guess, right now a conflict between the desires for this project and the outcomes we'd like to see versus the money, I guess, that we would ideally like to spend on.
Thank you. Because my experience is that members of the public really don't have much concept of how much all these things cost. And, what you put underground, even as irrigation, they don't, they just may be possibly interested in what they see, and what you use. So, I would really be preferring us to be upfront and just saying, right, well, for Plan A, this is what you get, and it's going to be about 150,000, and it's manageable in this year's budget, or whatever wording to that effect. Or there's Plan B, which is, a bit more of the Rolls Royce, but we would most probably have to stage this. So that's somehow, I'd really be liking us to move more that way, because I think it's, we go out to consultation and say, oh, we want the Rolls Royce, then it comes back to us. And then we've got to say, oh, whoopsie, we can only give you, you know, the cupboard is bare version. So that's where I'm having a dilemma with that.
Anybody else like to chip in?
Look, as I said before, I think the concept plan that Nina's come up with here looks really great. And for probably what we're talking, a third extra funding, we're going to have a park probably 75-80% better, I think, because you strip away that hard stand and the shade and the monkey bars, which were pretty popular in all the consultation commentary. It comes back to what a lot of the students from Prospect Primary said. It's a pretty boring, basic park. So for the sake of 60,000, I think we're coming up with a really good park that the community would love. And I recommend we stick with that.
We need to either extend suspension of meeting procedures for a further 5 minutes or call a line through that now and move back into session. So
I move to extend another 5 minutes.
Mover.
Seconder.
Seconder. All those in favour? Sorry, Councillor Pearce, did you want to?
No, that's how I see it.
Yeah. Well, I think regardless whether if we go out to consultation with a plan that we know is going to be require additional money in the budget, I think we just have to really highlight that and be open and transparent about that to say, currently we have this money available, that's going to get you X, Y, Z. If you want this, it's going to cost this, and we don't have it currently budgeted for, and you need that to be put in bold. Because I know we've got into sort of, and probably Alan will agree with me, that we've got into strife in the past, you know, on the master plan. I remember for Broadview, I remember when I ran the last election, people were saying, oh, the council are out there promising we're going to get this and that, and it's a $14 million thing. Now you're only going to put $1 million into it. And I thought, well, I'm sure that's not the case. They didn't promise that they're going to spend $14 million. The thing is, if you're not open, if it's not clear at the top and it's not in bold and it's not, this is not currently funded, this is a pipeline of works, and we'll apply for state and federal grants, or, you know, just be whatever, however we sell it, it's going to be clear at the front that if you want to achieve this, we've only got funding for this. So what else are we going to miss out on? I think you just have to be, if you want to, I personally don't mind if we go out to consultation with the plan, but we just have to be black and white and don't take 2 pages to get to the point. Right, clear at the top with our communications.
Councillor Harris.
I support that.
From the chair, just first of all a question, just clarifying that the budget that we're getting this money from is undersubscribed at the moment, so this is not a case of needing to increase the budget. It's a case of if we use the extra $60,000 for this project, then another project that we might plan will be $60,000. So it's not a case of we're going to have to increase the budget. It's just a case of deciding where we move an existing parcel of money around.
Yes.
Yep.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Lowen, to you, Deputy Mayor Lowen, the answer is yes, but it's a little more complicated than that, of course. Every year we have an allocation for capital works across all categories. Those capital works allocations are segmented in the long-term financial plan into a range of categories, and one of those is open space provision. That open space budget, from memory, has roughly $600,000 in it, Mr. Kamel?
$871,000.
$71,000 in it. And what you would ordinarily do is identify a range of open space projects that would subscribe that budget near to fully or somewhere around that. And as you go through the individual categories, you will end up with inevitably more projects and more demand than there is money, and you will end up with projects below the line. Now, members will understand that we didn't do a great job of that last week, and you'll see a different looking capital works budget next week. But in essence, if you boil it down to our open space projects that we council, that particular line is undersubscribed. However, unlike anything, it is always a question of opportunity cost, not just within the category, but also across the broader capital works budget. Any money that you do not spend can either be put over to next year or committed to capital works in other areas, or saved generally. So, you know, money that you don't spend on this could be committed to other capital works projects, even outside that line, were members minded to do so or committed to savings.
Just one more comment from myself. I can't remember the name of the street, but I feel a bit of deja vu here. A couple of years ago, we spent some money and we went through consultation and we spent some money on one of the parks in Harvey Street.
Cemetery, yeah.
And the sting of the public feedback of what we actually did, I can still feel it. And we ended up, the feedback was, well, what have you done? You've put in a couple of wombats and that's about it. So I think, my mind is thinking about what do we need to spend to make an impact to that park. And if it's 210 to get the additional features that really make a significant difference to the overall perception, then that may be worth considering. But I don't want to repeat that exercise again of having to come back and end up spending more money and having to deal with the communication and the fallout of that decision making, balanced with the difficult decisions we've got to make regarding budgets across the board. So that's just some comments from me. I think we've exceeded our 5 minutes, so unless there's any, I might pull us back into session. Okay, so we've had a mover, Councillor Pearce. Did you spoke to the motion already?
Yeah, look, I had a couple more questions. With the consultation, it's pretty much 50-50 with the dogs. And some people suggested some separation. Now, looking at the concept plan, I don't think that's possible. Is this a park where you can make dogs on leashes? Is there some ruling you can make with that? So there's a number of people with children who wouldn't take their kids there because the dogs running around the park.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, look, anything's possible, Councillor. The question is obviously one of compromise and cost. I'm not sure, Mr. Camell, whether you have anything to add there.
Yeah, through the Mayor, it would be possible to do under our bylaws, subject to appropriate signage and the like. As a general rule, if we advertise and put up signage, people would generally abide by it. If we gave suggestion that dogs run there as well, hopefully that's good.
Any further questions?
Just one more. There's 2 or 3 comments on the antisocial behaviour to do with the where the fence juts in, and Nina's drawn it up to sort of exclude that area. I know there was some talk about the person in 63 Percy Street buying that portion of land. Has there been any further advancement on that?
See you.
Mr. Camell?
Yes and no. We are maintaining correspondence with the adjoining property owner, who is still very keen to pursue the acquisition of that area. At this point in time, we're encouraging that discussion to take a little bit longer as we work through the design elements for the actual reserve aspects. We do think if there's any appetite at all to dispose of a small section, that's more than likely a triangular aspect to soften the impact for the adjoining property rather than the entire strip the property owner wants. That will at some point have to formally come back to you to actually ascertain if you're prepared to commence a community land revocation process. For now, though, we're actually trying to slow down the process while you do consider the reserve elements.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so got a mover calling for a seconder.
I'll second it for purpose of debate.
That's not bad. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion?
You've finished speaking?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. No, I think I said it before in the other comments that were made, noting that what we're doing is we're endorsing in principle the draft concept plan as an attachment 2. So I guess that gives a little bit of wriggle space there. And also we're coming back with in part 3 a further report. So I guess that's where there'll be more consultation on it and more discussion about money. So, yeah, that's where I am.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to support it, but I'm going to support it on the grounds that we take into account the discussion we had just previously, that particularly Councillor Rip's part that he added, that when we put it out consultation, we have the two versions or a couple of versions, and the real emphasis how it would become reality. You know, if we pass this one, it could happen tomorrow. We pass that one. So right at that top, start, give those people the two choices, and apart from that, I'll support it. Well, not apart from that.
Had Councillor Groote first of all, then Councillor Becker.
So look, I'll definitely support the motion. Just a couple of brief comments. First, I think we need to be really careful where we put ball courts, particularly right next to a neighbour's fence. So I think that's problematic from a design perspective. We've got time to, that can be, there's some wiggle room around that if we go out for consultation. But I know that when we did the Harvey Street upgrade, there was the same concern about having things very close to fences, particularly, and if you ever want to get the drumming noise of a basketball bouncing continually at 11 o'clock at night, go down to any of the parks that have basketball courts close by, and you understand what that noise is like at 11 o'clock. So I just think that's really important, and that may change depending on what happens with the adjoining land, and I think that's important. Second point I want to make was there were some comments in the feedback, just talking about it earlier, around wheelchair accessible equipment. I don't think we picked that up in the existing design, unless I've not read that correctly. So that's just something that may come back in feedback from residents. I think it's a really good thing to challenge ourselves on, because we don't have many, if any, or any at all. For example, a swing where you can put a wheelchair in and swing. So this might be the right place to do it, or it might not be, but I think we should challenge ourselves about how we think about that. And the third comment is, I certainly lead the chorus when we talk about consultation and how that happens. I'm just really, really pleased to see the Prospect North school engaged in this process. I think it's really good. So I just want to acknowledge the director for that. It's really good to see that happening. We need to do more of that. I think we do that with budgets from time to time, and we do it in other areas as well. I just think having that feedback from the kids, which is who's going to be there, is really important. So I just want to acknowledge that tonight too.
Thanks, Councillor Groote. Councillor Becker.
Just a question first through the chair in regards to if some of the arts budget can be applied to this project.
Theo?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, I would imagine that would go through PAN. Mr. Cunningham?
Yeah, through the chair, the CWPAR group discuss at the beginning of every year what budget is available. There's ability as council to create other budgets. However, a general rule is there's a $25,000 to $26,000 capital figure. In previous years, this council has made suggestions to the CWPAR in relation to the Broadview shops, for example, Collingwood shops, sorry, that a certain percentage of the budget or some of the budget should be applied in that area. So there is an ability for the council to provide some guidance. There's also two members of the council on that group as well. But essentially, the CWPAR have responsibility or authorisation for assigning that budget.
So look, I'm probably just more commentary. So I'm a bit nervous that the land issue hasn't been resolved, because there's a dollar figure attached to that process. So I would say, I'm just going to pull a figure out, just say there's a $20,000 or $10,000 cost associated with that community land process, and we haven't seen that reflected here. Maybe through the chair to the Director of Infrastructure, do we know what the cost of that process could be?
Mr. Kamel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we do. So we have also had, through the adjoining property owner, the land valued as well for what they'd have to pay if the process did go ahead. The overall process itself will cost in the order of $10,000. The land values come back at approximately $10,000. And if there's any variation required to any irrigation in that area, that also have to meet the cost of that. So if you go ahead with it, you should end up with roughly $10,000 in your pocket as a result of the transaction. Keep in mind the transaction takes probably at least a year to work through, and it is subject to moving to commission resolution to commence it.
So again, if we can use other budgets and we can use the community to get some sort of artistic outcomes, because I think that was the thing, sort of certainly on the fence, to make it look and new and feel like a little city village park. I agree with Councillor Groot about the proximity of any noise-making activities to a native fence. It is a small park, and I'd be encouraging of any signage to be put in for dogs on leash. I think it's really important. That's just a given with any new enclosed park. So again, like Councillor Barnett, it says in principle, but I'd almost move to remove that as presented and maybe work through a different presentation so someone else maybe wants to move and wordsmith it, they can. So it's very clear that the basic is 150 and the bells and whistles are more.
Who do you want to move that?
Amendment, is that?
Shall I move it? Amendment, yeah.
So through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, if the mover and seconder were amenable, we could say incorporating the proposal presented in attachment 2. And that would enable us to go out with the draft concept plan, incorporating that document, but also capturing alternatives.
So what is it? Sorry, I can't.
2 or?
That would be, yeah. So endorses in principle the draft concept plan for the purposes of consultation, but rather than saying as presented in attachment 2, we could say incorporating the design outlined in attachment 2. And you may then wish to add as well as lower cost options, or words to that effect.
And lower cost options could incorporate if needed to be staged, I guess.
Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Okay, let's run that past the mover.
Well, not really.
I think you can. I'm channeling my inner mayor here, and I'm feeling like I should say you can only say yes or
Yes,
no.
well, probably no. I think we're just confused.
So is that a no, Councillor Pearce?
So we're right to go with this amendment.
Sorry. So it'll need to be dealt with as an amendment then. So
Actually in favour of
I'll move it. I think it's just for clarity, so that do I get to speak to it? I do not.
I think you do get to speak to it. Yes, we'll just wait for. Yep. Okay, Councillor Backer.
Look, it's briefly just to create clarity, and we are in a really interesting position where we don't have a lot of money. Our community is facing their own challenges with rising fuel prices and CPI and things like that, the cost of living. And I think we just want to be really clear that we're doing our best. Yes, this is aspirational, but this is what it costs. And I think it's actually a communications issue. We can't just keep going out with the grand master plans every time, because guess what? People say, yeah, we'll have that, we'll have that, we'll have that. So if we can sort of the A and B, and then, you know, it's really clear that we are actually considering both options. So I'd encourage you just to support this, and that's a way I'd like to look for the next 12 to 18 months. But we're in a really tight budget, and our community has to realise that.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it for the purpose of debate, but also to I think we just have to be open and honest with our community, and it's a comms and marketing exercise just as well as it is a feedback and exercise, and I think we just need to have honest conversations. Again, probably repeating what you just said, Councillor Tobacco, but we do have to have honest conversations with our community to say, if you want X, Y, Z, it will cost you this. If you want the grant, it will cost you this. Here's some low cost options. What do you think? And I just think if we're not prepared, I think we should be prepared to be having those type of conversations with our community, because this is about, and for me, it's just about being as transparent as we can be in these times. And we know that we've got asset issues in terms of recovering costs and budget. And at the end of the day, I think the asset issues we're experiencing are probably, as awful as they are, it's the positive will come out of it. It will push these type of things where we'll be having these type of conversations, which I don't think is a bad thing at all with our community.
Thank you, Councillor Rip. Is there any more discussion around the amendment? Councillor Pearce.
I think it's like Councillor Green said, we're going to go back to the people who are using this, the people that are 5 to 12 years of age. We're wasting our time. We've had one consultation. They were saying, it's like saying to a boy over there who's 10, you want the big bag of Maltesers at market, or do you want the small packet? What are you going to say? Big packet. We're going to say, do you want attachment 2, which then is presented beautifully, or do you want a lower cost option? They're going to go, what? No. So I don't really see what this is achieving. I know what Councillor Tobacco is saying as far as our tightness, its budget goes, and that's fine. But if we're going to put it back to consultation, redraw it without those extras, because it's going to be a no-brainer. They're going to be. You get 35 people that have come forward last time all ticking the attachment 2. They're not concerned with our budget. Let's face it, we are. But they're not going to care whether it's 150 or 210. They want the ballpark park. That's not the right way to say it. They want the park as put forward in the draft concept plan, which I think looks fantastic.
Thanks, Councillor Pearce. Any further discussion?
Just a question, if possible.
Question?
Yeah. With what we put out, will there be the option to include, I guess, figures saying if it's 150 for the current design, or if it's 200 or whatever, this is the impact will be on rates, and this will be, because I think this is where the comms and marketing comes in, to explain to people at this price is this, at this it'll impact this. I think we need to be giving. Are we going to give examples?
So through your Deputy Mayor Larwood, yes, we could do that. But if you think about the number of rateable properties in the city of Prospect, the extra $60,000 is $5 to $6 for 1 year of rate. So it's not going to be substantial. The other way I've seen this done is to express it again in opportunity cost, which is how I expressed it before. What else could you get for that $60,000 that if you spend it on this, you may not be able to get this year or potentially at all? And we could certainly look at some options in the Forward Capital Works program, which we could identify there. Again, $60,000 for a project is not a huge amount of money, but there are things you could identify in there that are around that sum that you could purchase. So I'll explore those sorts of things with our community engagement.
Cool, thanks.
If there's no further discussion, we'll put the Councillor Green.
Just a very brief point. I think we should be true to ourselves in terms of what we want to get out of this park. I mean, that's kind of first and foremost for me. This is what we want. This is the high quality that we want out of the park. But I think it's actually more important for us as a council to understand, well, how do we achieve that? And so it might be split over 2 years as a way of trying to mitigate the costs in 1 year. I don't mind having the options put up and saying, this is going to cost 20,000, it's going to be 40,000. But I think Councillor Pearce is right that people won't care. And I've got a 10-year-old kid who will look at that bag of Maltesers and say, I'll take the big one every day of the week. So I think it is problematic if we put that up. But I think it's up to us to work out what we can afford, when we can afford it, but importantly, what we want out of our parks. That's my comment.
Great. If there's no further discussion, then we are going to vote on the amendment. So all those.
There's no summing up.
Oh, sorry, no summing up on the amendment.
No.
Great.
That's a question.
Great. Okay, so let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4 against. The amendment's carried, and I believe I say thus incorporated into the motion. So we've got a mover and seconder. Do we go out for any more discussion, or we're all done and dusted?
Could ask the
Maybe those that haven't spoken.
motion to sum up if she wishes.
Okay. Councillor Backer, would you like to sum up?
I would. Look, I think it's been some good discussion, and I think it probably lends itself more broadly to our approach generally. So we can always have the fancy picture in any of our projects, and of course everyone's going to say, "I want that one," because people can't unsee it. I always do that from a sales point of view because people can't unsee it. So when we're promoting these projects, it's really great that we're creative, but even when we go out to tender, I'm nervous that, things will be delayed, there'll be shortages of staff, there could creep higher. So across all our projects, I'm really encouraging to say, okay, well, this is this cost and this is this cost. Because if we apply that to all our projects, ultimately we're going to have, 2.5% councillors and we're going to have 6% councillors. And I guess you have to decide which one you want to be. And I think it's great that we can promise everything to everyone. And it's not that we're going to live and die by this particular park, but I think it's just an attitude that we have to look at across all our projects when we're actually, unless if we were cutting something else, we've got discussions later about events and GISP and all that kind of stuff. If we're cutting other things, that's fine. But if we're not cutting things, we have to really look at each project as an opportunity to tighten our belts. And so I'd encourage you to support the motion. I think it's going to be a really great park and we'll find a way to fund it.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Okay, so let's take a vote. All those in favour? 2, 3, 4. All those against? No one. Carried unanimously.
I have an option.
So, Councillor Pearce actually moved that paper, that motion. Not Councillor.
Yeah.
Oh,
There we go. I retract that comment.
so
I moved the amendment, not the.
the summing up was on the amendment.
So sum up.
This has become the motion, Councillor. So after the amendment was passed, the amendment was incorporated into the motion and thus Councillor Backer became the mover of the motion and was thus able to sum up. I'm not sure if that's consistently done here. My apologies. Sorry, that's a risk.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Breaking new ground here.
Yeah, so we're going to have to do it again, Deputy Mayor Larwood, and I'm sure that watching home.
Stole your thunder. Sorry.
Here's my big question.
Well, they shouldn't have got papers then.
Well, I know. I'm pretty sure we're at West Torrens. If the amendment was passed, it was almost like that person took over the motion. So I don't know. But I know we've done it differently here too.
No, I haven't done it.
Exciting.
Yeah, because anybody who's spoken before isn't supposed to speak.
Anyway, I think that's a great discussion point for after the meeting if we're having some cheese and biscuits and wine. In the meanwhile, let's move on to item 10.4 on the agenda, Prospect Community Support Future of GISP.
Sorry, can I just make a comment? I probably should have done this earlier. I do want to declare an interest in this. So I am responsible for an alternative CHSP program. So I'm not declaring a conflict, but purely an interest. I'll stay in for the debate and vote. Apologies, I should have done it earlier.
Thank you, Councillor. Great. Okay, so item 10.4, do we have a move?
I will move it.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I think the report writers, I think it's given us a very clear picture of a difficult to understand area. And I think part of it is we've got a bit of a dilemma there with them staffing, I think, as well, until certain time frame, the future time frame, I think. And I think this is, I must admit, when I was reading through all this and it came to our attention about all this, I was going back, what are some of the core council businesses, and, like reflecting on, well, what are we in this for, So in part of that then has been answered, because it's been suggested here that recommendation is that we only do one part of it and not do the other part, of which there are many service providers out there. So I'm quite happy, given the time frame and information that's in our report, to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do we have a seconder?
For the purpose of
Councillor Brett.
don't wish to speak to it at this point.
Got this.
I don't have
We see.
Hey, I get to say that.
Sorry,
I waited for years to say
you're likely to let him have a chance later on.
Well,
Great.
Section 47. Thank you, Councillor Brett. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Barnett, Councillor Group.
Okay. Question first. Yeah, I just wanted maybe through the chair to get a per head dollar figure on what, like, I know it's funded, but like with the number of people that we're servicing, how much is it actually costing?
CEO, we have those figures at hand.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, the numbers are there. I'd have to do a bit of rapid division to figure it out. So my understanding is around roughly 600 clients. 600 to 700 across the year. And it looks like at the moment our current budget was $661,000. So I think that neatly divides into just over $1,000 a client. But that's very rough, because some clients will be using far more and some clients will be using very, very little. And again, that covers both arms of the program, social programs and the Home Assist. And noting again that a lot of that Home Assist funding goes almost directly to the providers of that funding, of the support. So it's a hard question to answer, I think, with any degree of accuracy.
Yeah, and just for me, more commentary. Look, I'm always cognizant that this is a really nice to have, and I'm probably going to take the comments of Councillor Harris in comments that people feel safe and comfortable dealing with their local council to get some of these services. I'm also aware that there are other providers. So I hopefully under the CEO's guidance, and we do delegate it to the CEO, that the staff time and the opportunity loss. So if there is, we're making sure that the hours attributed for GISP and that's funded, and if it's not. But I also would be encouraging of, there are other programs in the area provided by local community groups as well. So I'd like to see what we're offering, not just our own services, because I often sit downstairs and I listen to the conversations that I had. There are a lot of other things in our community that can be promoted, and we could actually be welcoming in another provider to use PainThing. So that's something that I think we have to look at. So what this does is delegates the authority of the Chief Executive Officer under these certain conditions. So I think if it's not going to work out well for us, we should be using PainThing as another opportunity to maybe bring in other service providers where we can't provide it. And we've got a town hall sitting empty and spaces that where we can provide opportunities for other people. So with that, I'd support the motion, but with that oversight from the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Group.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So this is a challenging paper for us, and I think it's a challenging paper for the consumers of the services as well. And I think at the outset, I'll say that I won't be supporting it. And I think I'll be supporting it. I'm interested to hear what others have to say. So just going to the comment, I think that's been made already in terms of what's our core business. Well, the core business is what we want our business to be. That's ultimately an upgraded playground at $250,000 or a CHSP service, that's our decision. If we go to the old school thinking, it's roads, rates and rubbish, and we're more than that. So I think if we want this to be our core business, we make it our core business. I just want to understand that I'm reading the metrics right, because it's based on the metrics by which I'm making my decision. So the first question I have is on page 48. It talks about other service providers in the area, and the numbers look quite high, so 80 service providers. But then when you kind of drill down to it, total number of service providers with availability to accept domestic assistance referral and home maintenance referral, and they're the ones that we're likely to give away, are only 3. So that doesn't necessarily indicate to me a thriving supply of services that our residents could potentially go to. I just want to make sure I'm reading that correct. So the 3 and the 3 on the 2 right-hand columns there, that suggests to me that there's only 3 organisations who could pick up our clients for those 2 services around domestic assistance and home maintenance. Is that correct?
So through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, I'll check in a moment with Mr Cunningham, but it's important to note that we don't actually provide those services now. What we're doing is going out to the existing providers and contracting with them to provide this service. Mr Cunningham, do you have anything to add to that?
No, through the chair, the way you've read the table is correct, but the comments in the CEO are also correct in terms of
Second question I've got is just in relation to the savings that were realised by this. And I'm trying. Am I right in understanding on page 51 that we're putting in around $21,000 into the program? I presume that's a net contribution to the CHSP program. So it says net impact to council rates, 20,963. So is that, read a different way, are all costs covered of the CHSP program except for $20,963?
CEO, I'm going to have to ask Mr Cunningham to take that one. My understanding was that the service was largely cost neutral.
Yes, through the chair, I actually can't account in my own mind what that 20,000 is, because essentially it's money in, money out. 20,000 may relate to some superannuation staff costing or printing that we would do and the like. Essentially that administration. This is not a cost saving recommendation.
It's quite possible through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, that relates to on costs of other staff, which we do expect some savings on. I mean, the primary savings, if you can call them that, are not financial. They are risk and, I guess, capacity-based savings. So right now there's a heck of a lot of work going on behind the scenes, spinning the hamster wheel to process invoices and stay on top of the relationship between our largely prospect-based customers and the providers of these services. That's where you're going to get the savings, plus obviously the audit, risk, reputational savings there. But we're not suggesting there's any significant cost savings here.
Because that led to my next question. In terms of the grant offer for 22-23, it's some $40,000 or $60,000 more for the next financial year, albeit it's in arrears, not in advance, which is problematic from a cash flow perspective, no doubt. But from a sort of overall cost, there is the potential for us to not only recoup that $20,000, but invest another $20,000, $30,000 into the program. Is my assessment of that also correct?
So through
everything else being the same.
Through Deputy Mayor Larwood, subject to a number of things, one being the cost of the external service provision that we're already getting, which undoubtedly will have to go up. Everything is going up at the moment. It's also subject to us meeting the KPIs, not next year. The KPIs will be indicative, but in 23-24, we're going to need to get there. And the third very important component to note here is that we know we must invest more in our governance, audit and support, administrative support of this function. So we're going to have to spend more just to keep our head above water with the growing audit requirements. Mr Cunningham, anything to add?
No, that's all correct.
So as I said, this is a really tricky one for us, because I feel in my mind that this is a really good service that we offer local residents. I think the point is that most residents come from either Prospect or Walkerville, but not from anywhere else within the eastern area, which shows a huge demand here. Conversely, I'm concerned, will the demand be picked up for services here from other areas? And is this our first stage of actually not doing any CHSP services in the future, because it is going to get harder. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be more risk associated with the program. The funding model is different. And I think what is going to happen, and my understanding of what is happening, is many more organisations are saying, all too hard to get out of it. And I guess my question is, and I heard someone make this reference in the last couple of days in a political sense, but government is there to do the hard jobs and to do the risky jobs because the private sector won't. Now, I'm not suggesting we can apply that directly to this, but I think it's a really good analogy that if we don't do it, why would we expect anyone else to do it? So I'm just not comfortable enough to make this decision tonight. So I'll, at this stage, probably vote against it. I understand we need to do something, and there is some good thinking. And I know we've had one workshop on this. I'm just not feeling comfortable to make that decision tonight. So.
Thank you, Councillor Grew. Any Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thanks for that, previous councillor, because I wasn't going to vote for it. I was going to vote against it. And I think when we look at our core sort of thing, looking after our people, our residents, is our core thing, whether it be their road, their tree, their health or whatever. So it becomes the core thing. Unfortunately, I've dealt with the NDISs and all these, and just a few moments ago, the NDIS are looking to cut back another 3 or 4% of their overall bill. And so I don't want to get into that political side, but you start dealing with these people. Cleaner coming tomorrow at 8 o'clock, you get a phone call, they're not coming now till 2, and you might have an unskilled person and various things. I think us having the finger on the pulse helping it. I still support it goes out to other providers through us dealing with them. I'm not saying that we don't have to do that. We don't need to do that. We need to do it. But I'm saying if we got our finger on the pulse, it's far better. The lady at 2nd Avenue rings me up and says, Alan, the people haven't come and helped me to the plumbing out the back. And then I come to Brendan or yourself down there, to other people. I think we should have it as part of our core thing to help people. And to do that, I'm opposed at this moment of the way this is talking about, keeping the entertainment stuff, but letting the hard work go out the thing. Because we are a government and we are the people that have to do the hard tasks, not the easy tasks. Well, we can do the easy ones as well, but the hard task comes back to us. Because you see the private people that run the things like child minding, run the private things like old folks' homes and all these sort of things. They all drive around in bloody Ferraris and things like that. We don't. Sorry, you don't either. So I believe we should be keeping it later on if you bring up something else. And particularly, I think Thursday, we got a meeting, and I'm looking right over there. We got our first meeting of the disabled set up for the council, the disability sort of thing. And I think that we should be looking at those tracks before we start handing them off. We get a concreter, the next bloke can lay concrete, but looking after people is part of our core business. And so I'm going to oppose this motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Just from the chair, a quick question, CEO. How long, so that the current model is that we're taking care of some aspects of this, but we're essentially subbing out to contractors other aspects. How long have we been doing that for?
Mr. Cunningham?
Since the transition from PAC to CHISP, so around the 2016, 17 mark. Yeah.
And
the Home Assistance been.
And do we have any feedback on any concerns or changes in quality across that time? Do we collect that sort of information? Is there any way of us getting involved and understanding what that looks like?
Through the chair, short answer is we don't collect the data, but if we were getting that type of feedback regularly, I'd know about it, and I don't. So the satisfaction with the service doesn't appear to be any less now than what it was a decade ago. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's there seems to be some value in doing this, but the key thing in my mind is by removing ourselves a little bit more from the process, we're a little bit. So unless we can build in some mechanisms to ensure that we do have our finger on the pulse, such as Councillor Harris mentioned, it's a difficult decision to make. Anyway, just my 2 cents worth. Anybody else would like to speak to the motion? Okay, that being the case, I'll go back to Councillor Barnett to sum up, please.
Yes, well, I mean, that's why we're here, aren't we, to make the difficult decisions and the nice decisions. So quite clearly, if you vote against this, I would think then that you have to realise that what you would like it to be replaced with, you have to pay for. You have to pay for avoiding our risk. You have to pay for other staff to be employed to be monitoring all this. We're just one of 80 service providers within our region, a hop, step and a jump away, right? We've got others who could be doing this as well. So I think it's much better to at least do this, what's in the proposed in the motion, because quite clearly nobody else has put up anything else to make any difference and add any more money to our budget to go and do it. So that's where you're at. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Okay, let's put it to the vote. So all those in favour? Against? Motion's carried.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No. So division called. So those who voted against, I think we like those to stand up, don't we? Thanks very much. Okay. Item 10.5, draft asset management plans. Do I have a mover? Sorry, I'll say that a little bit louder. You have a mover. No.
I'll move it. I mean, what else can we do? Come on.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, dear me. No, I think thank the people who wrote the report, and this is our wicked dilemma child. So I think it's fairly obvious what we have to do.
So I just should have drawn members' attention to the slight amendment, which you can see on the screen, subject to minor administrative amendments.
Yes, I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it, and I'll simply say, look, we've known assets has been an issue here for a while, but I do appreciate the Director of Infrastructure for bringing us over at least the last 12 months a series and just being honest and frank with us, having frank discussions about where we currently sit with our assets. And this is not on the Director of Infrastructure. This has been an ongoing problem that we've pretty much, I would say, ignored for a long time, and we're just seeing, I guess, the ramifications of that coming to light now. But I do appreciate the honesty of the Director and integrity of the Director to, I guess, bring all this to us. We know we've got a budget, we know we've got budget implications with assets, and that's what we're dealing with now. But at least we're being honest about it, we're being frank with our community, and we just need to keep doing that in the long run. So I echo Councillor Barnett's comments that this is just what we need to do, and we need to get on with it, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Rip. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor.
Just a comment. Probably, I'm probably not as glowing. It could have come to us later. I guess I'm reassured in part that some of the draft and asset management, or the draft asset management plans have gone to audit committee, but what audit committee have also mentioned is that really there's a lot of data missing and we don't have accurate condition reports. And this is the issue. So in many ways, we're stabbing in the dark, and this is why things come to us as a surprise. Now, there's a few emails to and forth about the possibility of drilling down and getting better condition report data, but that's another budget line. You know, it will give us a clearer report. Could be that we need to spend more money. I think that will come in time. So look, I'm comforted with the fact that this is a draft that's going out to the community. However, I think some of the wording is a little bit misleading. So it's an asset management plan summary. The draft asset management plans aren't going out to the public. And so, you know, if anyone in your community is really interested, I'll dig out the draft asset management plans and circulate them as well, because I think there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of assumptions in there about, you know, is it a gold-plated footpath or is it a, you know, gold-plated road, or is it, do we want to spend money in other areas and this is, you know, acceptable to the community. So I keep coming back to condition and service levels.
Yes.
And probably from the last conversation with Chis, I was actually surprised in the previous workshop to discover that we've got an on-demand sweeping service, and I'll be writing an email about that from our infrastructure team. I wasn't aware of that because that's not a service level that I think we've ever endorsed. So I think we've just got to make sure that we are presenting service levels to our community, and this is a step towards that. So in going out as draft, it'll be inviting the community and ourselves to make comment on it, and hopefully we're a step closer to getting where we need to be. So I'll support the motion as it is with the administrative amendments.
Councillor Backer, any more discussion? Councillor Grove.
Just a very brief question. I'll support the motion. Thank you for the work. It has been difficult dealing with this one. But I'm just interested in the consultation, because when you consult about a playground, it's pretty interesting and it's kind of sexy. This, you know, there's how many pages, 17 or 18 pages of the summary. How are we planning to consult, and well, not so much how we're planning to consult, how are we planning to engage with people on this? Is it going to be a static, it's on the website, comment if you want, because we can probably save ourselves 6 weeks, or is there some other process we want to use?
So yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, that is a great question. These are dry processes that people don't, you know, love to jump in and talk about. There are a couple of rare individuals out there in the world who get into this, but most of our engage with it. The service levels component, which has been added, I think, at the assistance of members following recent workshops, is probably the one that will get people talking. I will be engaging with our community engagement people to try and come up with some meaningful way to get people talking about this, but I can't promise you great results. We'll do the best we can. I think it's important that members take the opportunity to raise this with your constituents at any opportunity, because this is ultimately, this suite of documents is one of the biggest drivers of our ongoing operational expenditure. So whilst it's dry and boring, this is what constitutes a huge portion of the rate spend that we deliver. And so whilst we can jump up and down and say, you should be paying attention to this, and we will do our best, I think the fact that, you know, a good percentage of everyone's rates bills goes to this should hopefully get their attention. And so any efforts that members can make to help us and encourage this, and we'll circulate and share what we're doing so that you can have your constituents engage with that. Because of course we want feedback, but yeah, it's going to be hard.
Good luck is what I'd say. It's a really tricky one, this one, I think. And to continue the Maltesers metaphor, we have to be careful that we don't offer everyone the big bag, because we'll create, and again, an unfair expectation. Everyone's going to have, you know, a billiard table smooth footpath outside the house, and we're not going to.
Just on that, through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, a lot of adjustments have been made to the service levels to try and not overinflate expectations. And, you know, Director of Infrastructure will attest to this. We spent a lot of time on that. We still understand they're not perfect, but what we're trying to do is reflect that technical service level of lowest whole of life cost into something that the community will actually see and feel and touch in their infrastructure.
And I said it before in this chamber, I'll say it again, our residents walk out of their front door and if they fall into a pothole or they trip on a footpath, they have a gutter that's crumbling or they have a road that's not really particularly smooth, that's the first impressions of council. And so this is really important to your point. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Groot. Any further discussion? Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, look, I think it's been a great discussion about this. I want to commend the director on presenting this report. It's obviously gone to a lot of trouble. I quite like looking at figures like this, but I take Councillor Groot's comments that we won't see a big consultation feedback on it probably, but it's a report that we needed, and it addresses service levels, it addresses the financial summary, risk management. It's all encompassing. It's a great report.
Thanks, Councillor Pearce. Okay, back to Councillor Barnett.
Yes, thanks for the comments, and also it was remiss of me not to thank the director and his staff. And on page 61, I note that where the consultation process would include, and I'm just wondering if there might be the offer of a community tour, and I don't know how you make it sexy, but we went out on one and some of it, things were revealed to us that we most probably didn't know. And for example, up with East Waste, when people go on the tour, the facilities and see all about the composting and the recycling and everything, everybody, I've been on one myself, and it's always a bit of quite an eye-opener. So I don't know, that might be a suggestion.
10 potholes across.
Whatever.
It could work.
Yeah. Where all your money goes, the big hole that your money goes into, most of your money. Anyway, so thanks for that.
Thank you for the suggestion and the summary, Councillor Bay. Okay, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Sorry, just go that again. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 10.6, Local Government Association Ordinary General Meeting 2022, voting preferences. Do I have a mover? Councillor Pearce, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I think it's self-explanatory. It's about all I say. Yep.
Do we have a seconder?
Somebody, all right. I mean, I do want to get home tonight. So, so I would just like a question on 7.4, the stamp duty on the residential property. It seems that the suggestion is that we're not supporting that. I'm just wondering, is that we're just not supporting our country cousins, or is there any particular reasoning?
Yeah, so through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, the reason why staff are a bit concerned about this one is the risk of inequity and also the concerns that it raises over how the state budget would be impacted potentially by the loss of revenue. It's not that we don't support our regional cousins, of course we do. I happen to be one, so I would love it. But at the same time, I think it's it requires. Staff are concerned about the broader impacts, and I think, look, it's open to members obviously to adjust this if there's a feeling around the table that this is one worth supporting, but that was the reason why we're a bit remiss to support that one.
All right, thanks for the explanation.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Not back to Councillor Pearce to sum up.
No, nothing to sum up.
Okay, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Yeah, so that's carried unanimously. Okay, so we are moving now on to general business, urgent items. Are there any urgent items people would like to discuss? Nope. Okay, moving on to item 12 on the agenda, reports for information. So I'll be asking members to consider which items they'd like to pull out to debate. And just noting I'll be pulling out item 12.1 at the request of the Mayor. So Where are we in the agenda here? Sorry, just a sec. Anyone like to pull out item 12.2? Anyone like to pull out item 12.3? Okay, would anyone like to pull out item 12.4?
Yeah. Oh, toilet one. No, or both. That's yeah.
Okay, would anyone like to pull out item 12.5? CA, do we vote on block on the
remaining items on block?
first block? Yep. Okay, so I'd like to item 12.2, 12.3 and 12.5. We don't do a mover and a seconder from memory, so we're just voting in favour of it.
We do move and second on block.
Councillor House?
Yep, I've moved it.
Second it.
Councillor Rip, seconder. Any further discussion?
No debate.
Oh, no debate. Okay. Okay, let's put that to the vote. So all those in favour? Against? So that's carried unanimously. Items 12.2, 12.3, 12.5. Item 12.1 pulled out at the request of the Mayor, and I might just ask the CEO if he wouldn't mind providing a couple of sentences of comment around that.
No. This is the Mayoral Monthly Activity Report.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, which
that's the other
relates
one,
to
yeah.
a couple of items that are incorrect.
Oh, that's right,
in the
yeah.
report
Yep.
change.
So just draw your attention to the changes on the screen highlighted in yellow.
Yeah.
Sorry, so do we vote on that one now?
Yes, assuming some.
So we move it.
Mover in a second. Mover, Councillor Rip. Seconder, Councillor Barnett.
That's quite a show with the hands there.
All right, so do we have any discussion?
There is.
Is there any discussion?
Let him go.
That's good, Mayor. I like them watching in from home. They've already forgotten you. Okay, Councillor Rip, vote sum up. All those in favour? Against? Unanimously. Okay, item 12.4, public toilet facilities in the City of Prospect. Councillor Rip?
Yeah, look, thank you. I will move it. Just want to provide, first of all, I want to thank the staff for the honesty and the report, bringing it all to our attention. Really thank you for that work that has been done. Obviously, on page 110, I am disappointed to hear that the overall condition of public toilets is poor within our city, with the traditional type of toilet blocks which do not meet current accessibility, safety and sustainability standards. Obviously, I want to thank the staff for the direct honesty with that statement in the report, but I would have liked that these issues are brought to our attention, so we're at least aware of that, particularly around budget deliberations. So I wasn't sure that it was that low in terms of rating. And I guess if we don't know, then we can't consider it. I do believe we need a strategy moving forward, and it's great to see that we do have budget bids proposed for 2022 and 2023. But for me, while these are good, they're reactive, they're not proactive. Again, reactive, not proactive. I'm not sure in terms of what the rest of the elected body think about the way forward, whether we do need a budget bid for 2022, 2023, which actually is either a review of policy or setting a long-term strategy. And if we don't want to do that this year, I would also like consideration that this report tonight is actually potentially provided to the new council. So the same report to be provided to the new council in January 2023 when they're looking at future their next budget. Do they want to put that in? If it's not going to be done this year, I don't want this falling by the wayside either. And new council gets elected, doesn't know that we've discussed this. So whether maybe if we don't want to do it in the upcoming financial year, whether we need this report presented to the new council around January while they're deliberating the next budget to see whether they want to put a budget bid forward for setting a strategy. So I'll leave my comments there. I reiterate, I thank the staff for the honesty. But again, I think it would be great if these issues are brought to our attention without requiring necessarily a set motion from council to have that thrashed out in a report. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor. We have a second. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, I'll second it, and at the same time, the reason I raised it on page 111, it's got the map of the known toilets that aren't trees. And I noticed that the well, I'm not going to walk right over to there. Council chambers out the back here, I thought this toilet out here is a public toilet that's parked by Anthony down the bottom. So that's not actually on the map. And over in the bottom right-hand corner, we got the Bombay Bicycle Club. I didn't think that would be a public toilet for Prospect. You get flattened getting across the road to get to that. But it's just on the map, you know. So if you look in the area where the town, I could hear wild animals, where the town hall is and this sort of stuff, you go down to the northern suburbs, you've got one toilet there, but you've got a vast area in between, you know, that there's nothing. So we should look, I know at Broadview Oval, the end result is hopefully we're looking at a toilet being rebuilt and done in part of the football club sort of setup. So that type of area is gone. The Collingswood shop, which we've done quite a bit to deal with, the toilet facilities don't work. There's a little one out the back that reminds you of being up the other side of Yunta, because I wouldn't go in there at dark night. But I'm just a bit concerned that we got the Bombay Bicycle down as a public toilet in the red, and we haven't got the town hall, unless someone can tell me the town hall is not a public toilet. No?
So through the Deputy Mayor, my understanding is we did disclose the fact that Bayindi toilets are not actually included on the list. I do recall reading that when I was going through the draft. I'm just having trouble finding it.
It did say that somewhere that I think it's on, it's on page 192, noted toilets within paint have been excluded.
So is that deliberately excluded or
I don't know.
accidentally? If it's accidentally, it doesn't matter. But
It was deliberate.
Through the mayor,
had a report
we
on that.
deliberately remove them. We can add them on and have them registered as a formal public toilet. This is a national public toilet register map that we've utilised, so we could have it added to it. Members,
Yeah, we should have
Yeah, we
it.
should have it.
Yeah.
There'll be more people to visit painting.
Come in one door, empty out,
Yeah,
and go in
exactly.
and buy a book.
It's called the Keep Short.
Take the book in there. So I've seconded it, but I would, if that's the reason that's taken off, I think it should be on there because it's, I think, very important, especially if women have got little tin lids trying to get somewhere.
We'll take that on board.
Just noting, if you blow up the map, looks like the Bombay Bicycle Club is the same colour, but that's actually a bed.
Is it?
Yeah, if you make.
I can't blow up a piece of paper.
Sorry.
They have beds in their
It's a
toilet.
slightly different colour. It looks very close, but it looks like it's a slightly different colour, and it's saying that there's a bed.
I would have got thrown out if I thought that was a toilet, wouldn't I?
Anyway, thank you, Councillor Harris. Anything else?
That's all.
The blue one.
Any further discussion on this item? Okay, all good. Thank you very much. Back to Councillor Ripp for summary, please.
Yep. Look, again, I believe we do need a strategy with this moving forward. So I'd like staff to obviously consider how that looks, whether it's now or a report goes to the future council. Obviously, I believe painting should be listed on the public toilet register. And we also need to consider as part of any future strategy to make sure you haven't got vast areas of our city not being serviced when there's, I'm looking here in the middle, we've got 5 listed here in close proximity, and we've got huge gaps in our city with nothing, and I think that really needs to be addressed moving forward as well. Equity across our city.
Thank you, Councillor Ripp. Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to council member reports and briefings. Are there any council member reports and briefings? Councillor Pearce.
Yes, the Director of Infrastructure and his staff convened a meeting early in March at the Sikh temple for the residents King and Redden Street. So it was a great meeting. There was about 30 residents turned up. The mayor and myself and Councillor Wynne attended. Regarding parking and traffic, clearly now it was a good meeting. It's just a really difficult problem. We had a further meeting with the community leader of the temple, and he addresses the same problem. They're overcrowded. Allegedly, they've been looking for another site for 6, 7, 8 odd years, and they haven't been able to find a suitable site. They need a larger site. So I want to thank the director for getting on board and doing that meeting. We are looking at strategies, but as we all know, we've already talked about permits and residential parking and all that type of thing. So it's not going to be an easy solution, but I want to thank the staff for at least getting it organised. And I'm sure the residents are equally accepting of it.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I'm not sure, I might just talk briefly about the opportunity I had to help out with the citizenship ceremony last night. It was fantastic to get a little bit closer to that in lieu of the mayor not being able to make it. And what you might not capture from the audience, but you do from being up close to the people who are receiving their citizenship, is just how excited they are and how much of a thrill it really is. It's not for them, except for the little kids who are scared more than anything, but for the adults, they were just genuinely buzzing and glowing and really, really excited by the whole process and really pleased to finally have taken that step towards citizenship. There was people from the age of 3 up to about 50 or thereabouts, and there was 37 on the night, and a good diverse mix of people. But the consistent theme was everyone was just really happy, really excited to be part of it. So I was pleased to have the opportunity. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, on that, so I'd just like to thank the Deputy Mayor for stepping in. He did a good job. And I think because it was Harmony, celebrating Harmony Day, it was also a little bit more special. But I think I did think this was a bit more joyous because of the emerging elder who he was very lovely and very entertaining. And also we had one of the children in the audience, he handed the little clapping stick. So every time somebody, one of the citizens went up, they got a little, glug, 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 clap, clap. I can't make the sound of it, but the clapping of the clapping sticks. So I just think that it would be something for us to take note of, I just thought that one was particularly more joyous, I think, than, perhaps some of others who can be reasonably straightforward sort of process.
That was clearly because I was in charge as opposed to the mayor, I'd say, Councillor Barnett. No doubt about that fact. But thanks for pointing that out. And he certainly did add a lot, not only through his presentation, which he does very well, but also he was engaging in the actual process of when everyone came up to receive their certificates, and he was really welcoming them personally. So that was a really fun part of the ceremony. Okay, if there's nothing else, then I'll move on to item 14, motions on notice. Item 14.1, notice on motion parking at Bayindi. So I'm going to move that one for the chair. The mayor's asked me to move that motion. I might ask the CEO if you wouldn't mind just adding a couple of sentences about the intent behind this motion, please.
So through you, Deputy Mayor, I'm not here to debate members, but in the absence of the mayor and having assisted him somewhat in framing this motion, I feel it might be helpful for at least to provide you some background from the mayor, at least by my understanding, as to why this motion comes before council tonight. Firstly, I think the mayor's the challenge that the mayor is attempting to address here comes back to, I think, a question without notice that you asked before, Councillor Groot, around concerns raised by local residents, particularly along Vine and Olive Streets, who are encountering significant conflicts with staff, which includes, of course, Nature Foundation staff as well, parking using permits and essentially parking all day, which is creating some conflicts in the street. The Mayor's intention here, as I understand it, is to attempt to try and address one of, I guess, the learnings that has come out of implementing this motion since January. The original intention of the motion was to try and help displace some of the construction vehicles in the back parking lot, and not to create intractable parking conflict between staff and residents along Vine and Olive Streets. The Mayor has made the observation that most other businesses in the city are expected to try and deliver some on-site parking for their own staff to the greatest extent they can. And the Mayor's intent, as I understand it, is to try and, through this motion, do something similar here at Bay Indy. In other words, to make sure that staff are not creating any more conflict with the surrounding residents than they absolutely have to, after having essentially taken up all of the parking that we can reasonably provide to staff on our own land. Now, that obviously, offers some opportunity for debate for members, and I'm not here to discuss the merits, but rather to try and explain, I think, the reasoning why the Mayor is moving this motion, or why he's put the motion on the agenda, why the Deputy Mayor's moving. Deputy Mayor, I'm not sure if there's anything you would add to that.
No, I think that
Meeting procedures, if that's all right, to further discuss this, because I do have a couple of questions.
certainly. So
I'll move it
and a
to extend the
so suspend meeting procedures for 10 minutes. Should we need it?
10, 15.
15.
15, yeah.
Maybe you can just
8:55 if we need it. Yep. Do we have a seconder?
I don't think I think you can just put it to a vote, can't you?
That's the vote.
Premises.
Move it a seconder, probably.
Yeah, well, Riv might second it. I heard it.
Day 55.
So mover and seconder. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, so we'll give the mover the first opportunity, then the seconder, and then we'll open up to anybody else who'd like to make some comments.
No one's moved it. David's moved it. I've just moved that we went to the thing.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I got some questions anyway. When you just made a comment a minute ago that with the parking on our land, I thought that rear car park was our land as part of by Anthony.
Yes.
So that is technically it's our parking area, and we've opened it up. So what we're trying to do now, this is a question, not an answer. What we're trying to do now is either the whole lot or a certain amount of that car park outside. We're trying to say no one can park there because it will be for upstairs and us.
Yes, so through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, the intent of the rescission and modification motion for council tonight is to remove the 2 hour limit from the back parking lot over there, with the exception, obviously, of those positions underneath Bay Indy and those special use positions already there for disabled parking and for the community bus. Right now, if you were to go out into the back parking lot, you would see that in fact, all of the parking along the western edge of that parking lot is 2 hours with a parking permit accepted. That enables anyone to park there for up to 2 hours, or anyone with a permit to park there without restriction between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. What we've discovered is that, and I think feedback has come to the Mayor, which has informed this motion, is that the tradespeople who are working next door in Bloom Apartments, the ones who created the original, as I understand it, who drove the motion that came to council back in November, they are continuing to park in those spots and are moving their cars in order to avoid parking fines. The concern there, of course, is that the intent of the original motion has been frustrated by that behaviour, and there's nothing we can do about it from a compliance standpoint. And what that is doing, of course, is meaning that staff can't park there using their parking permit. This includes Nature Foundation staff and council staff. So the staff, instead of continuing to be displaced into side streets, as they were before, but now, unfortunately, it's very visible which cars belong to staff and which ones do not. And as a consequence, that's creating some major angst for members of the community, and essentially directing their angst towards council, or certainly towards elected members, as I understand it. As I mentioned before, we haven't had a great feedback So I believe the intent of this motion is essentially to try and honour the original intent of the motion from November last year. Again, I'm not here to debate it, members, so if it sounds like that, please forgive me. But I'm just trying to give context to why this motion is before you.
So the issue I've got is I understand that you don't want conflicts between staff and residents on the street, but I suppose isn't it just reversing the conflicts that you're just going to have conflicts with staff and visitors to pay empty and or staff and contractors? So I understand that, but it's not really addressing the core, addressing the issue, is it? That I guess with that contract work going on, there are going to be parking issues on the street. So I'm not sure what I'm just not understanding what it's hoping to achieve, because you're going to have conflicts between staff and council between residents and council staff, or residents, contractors, residents, visitors to pay these. So I'm not sure, just not 100% sure if it.
So question. So through the Deputy Mayor, and again, all I can do is revert back to the debate that was had around this table back in November. Yeah. My understanding at the time was that there was a sense from the Mayor who moved the motion that night that this kind of action would incentivise the builders to open up their basement parking.
Right.
Now, the fact that we apparently have not been effective in enforcing that, I think is driving the Mayor to attempt this as a further means to attempt to incentivise it. Again, I'm not debating.
Yep, that's all right. So so if this, we go with this path, will that severely limit the visitors to pay the parking there, or short-term visitors? Will it have any impact on visitors and for paying fee?
So through the Deputy Mayor, the parking restrictions will apply from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. with the staff only. Right now, my office overlooks this parking lot. There are spots occasionally that open up when contractors usually leave the site between 11 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. It starts to clear out more and more. So those spots become available. Of course, were this motion to pass, one would imagine spots will be largely occupied most of the day. So you're not going to have really, except for the spots that are beneath Bandy, which will remain. There are a couple of 2-hour spots down there. There are a couple of 4-hour spots there for lobby drop-offs and the like. But otherwise, it will force short-term parkers to compete with the rest of the city. And again, I think that was largely in keeping with the original intent of the motion. Whether that's right or wrong is a matter.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
Councillor Backer, then Councillor.
So there's probably two things that I think. I mean, I know the Mayor's watching, but I think the original motion that came to us quickly, and I think there was a lot of changes in the floor, and it wasn't a good motion to start with. I think it wasn't considered, and I don't want to have a double standard, because and the other thing that it's shown is that when you start putting permits, there's a perceived ownership of the space in front of your house. So I think that's a lesson for all of us if we're exploring the permit system. So they're entitled to park in front, but people are getting angry because they've got a permit. So I just want to highlight that thing. I'm really uncomfortable that we're preferencing staff over our clients. My preference would be if say a permit, but if staff weren't identifiable, if they had number plates or something, that might be a way that you can manage it without identifying who they are. But to take up all these spaces without consultation, and there's a land management agreement through the back here as well. Is there a cost? No, it's just all pay and fee. And where other kind of things we will do consultation. I mean, I know a lot of residents that would love to get these kind of things sorted out like that, but it might take 2 years. And this is a transient thing. Our staff, yes, are being unfairly targeted, but it was a bad motion to start with. So I don't know where I sit. I'd like to hear some ideas, either a better solution, but I don't know that this is it.
Thank you, Councillor Backer. Councillor Backer.
I agree with a lot of what Councillor Backer just said. This is a wicked problem. The unfortunate problem is we don't have a wicked solution. initial motion wasn't a solution, and I spoke on the night about my concerns with it, and this doesn't fix it either in my mind. So we think of it as a closed shop. We've got a group of residents, we've got a group of clients, we've got a group of staff, we've got a group of contractors, and all four compete for the same places. So if we're just pushing the contractors out and bringing the staff in, all we're doing is swapping contractors for staff, and that's my concern. So the residents will start having fights with the guys in the utes rather than the people in the Highlanders. And so that's my concern, that this does nothing other than shift the deck chairs on the Titanic. And so I don't think it's actually solving the problem. Going back to the root cause of the problem, we've got a builder who has their staff on valuable real estate in terms of parking when they've got capacity. And I'll just go back in terms of, well, what's the solution? Well, the solution is, why don't we go back to the builder and have a conversation back with them? Now, we might be doing that, and we might have exhausted that, but in my view, we should be using that as an avenue to go and talk to them and talk about the wicked problem and the wicked solution. We've got till May. I think the motion went until May, and so we're only talking really now another 2 to 8 weeks. And so it might be that there are less trades now because they're doing second fix or painting, whatever. So it might be different than when they're pouring concrete and putting bathrooms or whatever. I don't know, but I just don't think this solves the problem. I think it just creates a different problem, and we solve one problem and staff will be happy. And I think to the CEO's point, at the moment with contractors in the back car park, there is some turnover. The staff bill is zero. So the first 30 people that get to work on a Monday morning will have that parking at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. So we're not only locking it up for the day, we're also locking it up for the early evening trade. So I think it's a bit of a double whammy. The other comment I was going to make, so there's one other comment, underneath the building. So, I park there every Tuesday night, and I know that there are some 15-minute parks and some drop-off, but a lot of those are permit as well. So, there's obviously staff parking and council vehicles in there. So there is, only 6 or 7 car parks down there, so that's not material, really. So I don't think, I know we're not quite in debate, but I don't think I'll support the motion because I just think it solves one problem but creates another.
That's the problem. Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I agree. I can't really see that, as was pointed out, it solves a problem for one group of section of people, but, still creates and can still lead to complaints against our staff. I think it would be more inflammatory knowing that there's going to be a whole lot of car parking signs, is it? And going to be having staff, I can't understand, is it going to have staff only car parks on there, nature thingo car parks only? Why don't we put in builders only while we're about it, and then all the rest of us can just, go and try and find a car park. Yeah, so it's been, I'm not really in favour of this. And then we're told that we've got possibility of 80 staff and nature staff permits as well. So I don't know what the solution is. I think it's more equitable than having the 2-hour car parks. At least then shifting people on. I don't know where they shift to. I haven't done a time and motion study, though some of the residents that complained to me have. So until there's something that's a bit more equitable, I would be voting against it.
I just have a further question.
Yeah, yes, Senator.
Just looking, I guess, at all this, have we thought about putting and whether it would be appropriate to, I'm not sure. If staff have been in talks with the builder, not got anywhere, have we thought about putting a comms piece out to the residents around this area to say, look, we apologise for the increased traffic and increased parking you're seeing, and just told them the steps we're taking, what the issue is, the steps we're taking. We haven't, and the fact we haven't got anywhere, and just advising them that this is a short-term issue. But have we actually thought about going out to the whole radius to actually say, we know you're having problems, and then trying to, if it's defending staff, if it's defending whoever's parking there, but just explaining to people this is why you're seeing an increased thing. Because otherwise people are just saying, I can understand if I was living there and I saw staff parking all the time, I'd probably be a bit irritated. And I'll just ask a question, but I think this is an opportunity for us to, if we haven't done it, to get on the front foot and communicate with those people around there, that we're aware of the issue, we're listening to them. We've gone and spoken to the builder. They're not willing to budge. So and just say, look, there's nothing more we can do. I'll just be honest if that's the case, and I would say put something out to them.
I think it's also fair to say this won't be the last apartment block built on Prospect Road against a residential side street. So we need to find a solution to this in some way.
Yeah.
Because there's 3 blocks up there that something's going to happen. There's Harrington down there.
Yeah.
And we have exactly the same problem. So I don't know what capacity we've got from a planning perspective to make something happen.
And let's look at neighbouring councils. I mean, they have the same issues, I'm sure, in Adelaide and whatever. So,
and you know what? Even if at the end of the day, if you can't find a solution, I know staff have been proactive at talking to the builders. It's about informing, I think, the residents of the actions we're taking, and we are listening. We know it's a problem, but these are steps we've taken. And I think sometimes people are just happy if they know that it's an issue and they know they've been heard, and you're trying. I think sometimes that can, be adequate.
Okay, we've got 1 more minute left unless we are finished. Okay, I'd like to bring us back into session. So thanks to everyone for your contributions. So we have a mover to get it on the floor. Do we have a seconder?
Slacks.
Say that again a little bit more loudly. Do we have a seconder?
Oh, we got a mover, have we?
I moved it.
But it lapses if we don't get a seconder. We're back to square one.
So one more time, we have a seconder. No seconders.
Balance the documents.
You have to ask for any motion.
Is there any motion people would like to put forward apart from this one? Okay, so the motion lapses. Okay, item 14.2, notice of motion 2022 federal election campaign. Do we have a mover? I'll move it.
At the same
Chair.
Yeah.
Just to talk briefly to it. So this motion is fairly much a template motion provided to us from ALGA, but we do have the opportunity to tailor aspects of it to identify priority local projects and programs that may benefit the City of Prospect that could be progressed with additional financial assistance from the federal government being sought by ALGA. So it's pretty much what's gone out to all councils, but we do have the opportunity to tailor and custom it for our own purposes.
I'm happy to second it. I mean, if we don't, I just think it makes it a bit more of an exclamation mark or drawing, that we will be supporting this, hopefully, along with a whole lot of other councils. If we don't do it, well, then I guess what does that say? That we're not supporting it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bono. Any further discussion? Councillor Greg.
Look, I'll support it. It certainly makes sense too. I just have 2 questions. One was there's one motion that talks about a national bin harmonisation program. I'm just interested if anyone has extra information about what that actually is. Yeah, exactly right. I'm just interested in that. Is that or if that's what it means?
That's having a national.
Oh boy.
National system.
Yeah, I might toss that to Mr. Kamel if he's got any idea. So if I can read it out, it says that as a circular economy initiative that we would support to investigate and, if feasible, implement a national bin harmonisation program that will improve curbside recycling, reduce contamination and maximise opportunities for reuse.
Sounds good. I just don't know what it is.
My guess is, and this is only a guess, I'm not sure I should be saying this to the council, is that this is similar to the initiative that you see around, trying to get the right waste in the right bin.
Yeah.
And campaigns around that you see. I see them advertised driving down Goodwood Road, for example, in other council areas. Anything?
Through the Mayor, all I'd say is a federal scheme to have shared terminology, shared coloured bins and shared expectation in regard to what can go in them can only be a positive. A lot of the main issues in regard to bins, even at a local level, are probably around the green bin, where people really don't understand what's going in them. I assure you, if you go, got some experience in Victoria, for instance, the expectation there and what can go in is very different to South Australia. If there was a federal program, federal acceptance of that, federal education, it more than likely would help at a local level.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
It's still an interesting word.
Yeah.
Monty Python has a singing bin.
Well, harmonisation legislation, I get it, will make sense, but I'm interested in this. It feels totally unachievable, but it certainly would be something that we should aim for. There's no doubt about that. It would be interesting to get some more information about some of these, or at least a link to where we could look for that.
Thanks to Jazz, who is on the ball. So all credit to Jazz on this. So I have a link here which I can read from. And essentially the main issue is around recycling. And this is an issue. It's definitely a problem. Having moved recently from New South Wales to South Australia, I can tell you what you can put in your yellow bin here is different to what you can put in it in New South Wales. And there's a lack of understanding from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. It may even be between local government area and different waste providers around, for example, whether you can put lightweight soft plastics or hard plastics, styrophones, these sorts of things in your recycling bin, whether cardboards need to be free of sticky materials and what have you. And it really is phased around that because, of course, what you end up having is overly contaminated yellow bins all go to landfill. And so what this is about is attempting to get, I think as Mr. Kamel suggested, consistent approaches to what you can put in your yellow bins so that people who are educated in one jurisdiction working or living or visiting another jurisdiction don't put the wrong things in the wrong bins and unintentionally contaminate the waste stream.
My second question for Jazz is just it does talk about the campaigns running for 5 weeks. Is that a media campaign or is that just something that councils will be asked to promote locally themselves?
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, my understanding is that this would be in the lead up to the federal elections and advocacy campaign.
That makes sense. Yep. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for those questions. Any further discussion on this item?
Yeah, I would like, particularly in future with these type of things, it's great that the Mayor is actually bringing this motion to us. But I also think it's also, I feel the responsibility of ALGA to actually be provided, unless we haven't, I haven't been aware of a lot of these type of things, what they're doing before. And I think it's great that the Mayor's bringing this to our attention, but I think it would be great if ALGA, if they're going to be running these type of campaigns, actually provides it well in advance and a breakdown of all the programs, all the details to us. Otherwise, all we're doing is reading this about harmonisation. I'm sitting there scratching my head going, what are they talking about? What do they mean? And if we're about to vote on something like this, it's pretty significant that we'd like to know well before comms from ALGA, well before we're asked to do this, to actually break everything down and give us all the information, and at least as an awareness thing before they run the campaign, it would be better, I think. But anyway.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more discussion?
Just to support that point, I think the motion could have come to us with an attachment that would have assisted our decision. Look, I see ALGA's, you can subscribe to their newsletter. They sort of end up in spam sometimes as well. I know they do a lot of work, and again, at the coalface with a lot of the things that are going on with, floods and all those kind of things. The local government association do a lot. And I think it's good that they have a strong voice coming up to the federal elections. So I do support the intent. But maybe just an attachment would have been good as for the.
Yeah, could we ask if the staff could provide any further detail to the elected members, if there is any available?
Well, through you, Deputy Mayor Larwood, if you wish, yes, we can certainly look to provide. I mean, look, I would imagine here that there's going to be an output. My understanding is from discussions with the Mayor that there is a pro forma advocacy document that we can essentially populate, personalise with some local flavour and add that to the mix. And that is exactly the sort of thing that would end up in the CEO update for you to review.
Thank you, CEO. Great. Thanks for your contribution. No need to sum up from my perspective. I'd like to put that to the vote. So all those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Okay, item 15, questions with notice. We have one question with notice regarding the ability of council as an entity to make submissions under the new planning and design code. I'll just read out the question. From a technical and legal perspective, can the council as an entity make a submission regarding a proposed development in light of the new separation of council and development assessment? Been provided with a lengthy response. Short answer on this is yes.
Chair, you stolen my thunder. Am I not supposed to read the question?
I was just about to offer you the opportunity to read the answer, Councillor Beck. Would you like to read out the answer?
Look, I will, only because I think it's really important. Short answer, which is not, on this is yes. So it is possible and lawful for the council as a body to make a submission on a development application. The Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act is written to provide an opportunity for any person to make a submission in relation to a publicly notified development application. Whilst a council is not a person, provided a clear description can be reached by the body through resolution, it can make a submission. Naturally, there are a number of logistical and technical challenges for the council should it wish, as a body, to make a submission on a live development application, including the following. An ordinary meeting or special meeting must occur during the public consultation period and with sufficient time for a submission to be prepared as a follow-up to a resolution before the public consultation closed. As with any council decision, a majority of members would need to feel suitably armed with information on the DA in order to form a view on it or vote on a motion regarding a submission. Thank you very much. Staff are enabled to prepare or circulate a report or copies of plans from SA Planning portal to facilitate this. So all members would need to individually view these from the portal during the notification period. The plans cannot be reproduced within a council agenda without the permission of the copyright holder. The council would need to determine who could make a submission on its behalf, noting that the assessment manager, Scott McCluskey, and to a degree the leaders that position reports myself, so I'm assuming that's Nathan Cunningham, and so I prefer the full names in there, have varying levels of conflict, but have some. This may mean nominating an individual elected member, an alternative staff member, such as the governance manager, currently vacant, or engaging a consultant at cost to write a submission and potentially present to the CAT. The staff conflict for those involved in the DA process or who have those staff directly report to them also creates challenges on the preparation of the motion, which would need to come direct from an elected member. Whew. Elected members who hold positions on the CAP, including deputy member, would need to form a view on conflict of interest and likely excuse themselves from discussion and voting any time in matter like this arose. There may be unintended consequences which also prove awkward to navigate. For example, the council may find itself later considering participating in an appeal against a decision of its own panel, and challenges such as funding both sides of the legal argument arise. Through research from the staff, there appears to be very few examples of this occurring under the PDI Act. However, something more common is individual elected members either making representations or assisting members of the community in doing so and helping them navigate the CAP process. Our legal advisors have recommended that it would remove any potential later consequences of complications if elected members made individual submissions regarding proposed development, rather than if the full body of council was involved.
Well done.
And I believe this will be included in the minutes.
Oh, good.
Rightio. Moving on to item 16, confidential items. 16.1, request for approval Contractor Services Capital Works Program. Now, I'm hoping I get all this in the right order. So, first of all, we need to move a motion to go into confidence and to moved, seconded. Councillor Ritt. No discussion. All those in favour? Okay, so we're now, and the camera is
How do you turn your cameras on?
or shut.